Good morning and welcome to our conference. This is our 6th conference on cosmology and consciousness, and our theme this time is compassion, virtue, and character. I'd like to invite our chief guest, Kazurinshin Kondo, to begin our conference by lighting the butter lamp. I'd like to invite the Venerable Geshe Lokta La to give a welcome introduction and talk.
Not to delay. Good morning, everybody. Venerable monks and nuns, Honorable Chief Guest, Your Excellency Kosurinshin Kondo La, distinguished science and Buddhist scholars who have specially come from various places for this international conference, other senior leaders from different organizations, invited guests and observers from various academic institutions, monasteries and nunneries. I would like to welcome you all to this 3-day international conference on compassion, virtue and character at Nobulinga Institute, India from September 28 to 30, 2017. This is the 6th series of the conference on cosmology and consciousness. This conference, organized by the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, is made possible with a grant from the John Templeton Foundation, USA, and the ongoing generous support of the Sacred Family Foundation, Boston. At the outset, I would like to give a brief background account of the science program that the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives has been doing and overseeing for the last many years. Based on the overall vision and direction provided by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives has so far implemented numerous science programs since the Monastic Science Initiative was started in the year 1999. We have Science for Monks, under which we organize several programs like the Science Workshop for Monks and Nuns, Sacred Science Leadership for Monks, Science for Monastic Graduates, International Science Conferences, and Science Exhibitions. In the case of the Science Workshops, several annual science workshops were organized from the year 2000 until 2007. And under the Sacred Science Leadership for Monks, several cohorts of monks and nuns have completed their training to produce science teachers and leaders who will work in their respective monasteries for successfully furthering the science education. Since year 2000, roughly speaking, over 70 Western scientists have taught several hundreds of monks and nuns under this program about physics, quantum mechanics, cosmology, biology, neuroscience, and mathematics, all with a strong emphasis on scientific inquiry. Then with the Monastic Graduates Program, several one-month-long workshops were held to introduce science to monastic graduates, geshes, khenpos, and lopons. Since these venerable monks and nuns are going to play a very important role in shaping overall education system in the respective monasteries, we felt it will be very useful if we are able to regularly give such exposure to these senior monks and nuns who have completed their Buddhist studies. This project is funded by John Templeton Foundation of USA, and each of the workshops is followed by a 3-day conference on cosmology and consciousness between Buddhist scholars and scientists. I'm happy to say that 1 month-long workshop we organized this time, and which was finished just a few days back, was organized especially for nuns. It was completed very successfully, and I would like to thank Domaling Nunnery for very kindly supporting us and letting us organize it within their campus and providing all the needed assistance. In 2007, another very important collaboration was established between Library of Tibetan Works and Archives and the Emory University in Atlanta, called the Emory Tibet Science Initiative. This initiative aimed at developing and implementing a comprehensive and sustainable science education program for Tibetan monasteries. Under this, we have not only trained hundreds of monks and nuns, and since 2010, we have been sending batches of monks, 6 in each batch, having the best academic performance to America, to the Emory University, to study science for 2 years. The first 3 batches successfully completed their study and now are taking a very active role in the science education activities in their monasteries with their excellent knowledge both on science and Buddhism. The 4th batch left just few months back to Emory University to study for 2 years, and which this time included also 2 nuns. This initiative also organized the first Emory Tibet Symposium at Drepung Monastery from December 18 to 20, 2016, which was attended by several thousands of monks from various monasteries and nunneries. It was unique in the sense that the Buddhist presenters against the well-known scientists were those monks who had graduated their science study at Emory University and thus were able to converse directly with the scientists without having to rely on a translator. And His Holiness presided that symposium and expressed his great pleasure to see such a development. Building upon His Holiness the Dalai Lama's long-term interest in engaging scientists in dialogue, these conferences are a kind of another extension of their dialogue. These conferences will promote the integration of spiritual values and scientific investigations, and discussions will focus on a wide range of questions such as contemplative meditation, mental states of awareness, compassion, and philosophical inquiries into cosmos and the world of the quantum. These conferences bring together Buddhist scholars and Western and Indian scientists and classroom educators into dialogue about topics of mutual common interest. This conference, the conference of this theme of this year is compassion, virtue, and character, and which are within the domain of consciousness. Basic aim of such conference is that it is, as a human being, and in order to have long-lasting peace, happiness, and harmony, it is very important to have this kind of dialogue on such important topics. It is of paramount importance to always speak of the importance of compassion and kindness in order to help build a better, happier human society and a brighter future. This can happen only through mental training, not by surgery or injection. The result of such training are mental qualities like compassion and awareness, which we will be discussing during this meeting. The concept of compassion and loving kindness, I'm now trying to touch a little bit about the 3 topics that we are going to discuss in these 3 days. The Buddhist concept of compassion and loving kindness should not be like that of a hawk and a wolf, which is partial and biased. So a biased kind of love and compassion is there even with their family members. So benefiting just one's own friends and immediate circles and remaining at the same time deceitful, cunning, and hypocritic to other sentient beings is not counted as a proper Buddhist practice. The more we understand that we are one family on this globe, the more we will open our heart in compassion to others. I think normally it would be the most normal state of being to feel compassion towards others. However, wrong or incomplete understanding of compassion ensue improper results. As such, these days we hear words like compassion fatigue, which has been described as the cost of caring for others in emotional and physical pain. It is characterized by deep physical and emotional exhaustion and an uncharacteristic inability to feel empathy for others. Compassion fatigue is also called vicarious traumatization or secondary traumatization, where the emotional residue or strain of exposure to others who are suffering or reliving traumatic incidents impacts you and over time can become overwhelming, possibly even causing burnout. Just a couple of days, I read a piece in the health section of the Auckland Press of a special report to the Washington Post, which was titled, Tibetan Buddhism-Based Compassion Training Eases Doctors' Burnout. A Mayo Clinic survey found that nearly half of a physician in the United States have at least one symptom of burnout, and the phenomena is more common among doctors than other professions. This can have a detrimental effect on patient outcomes. Studies have found that higher levels of physician burnout correspond to more medical errors, the third leading cause of death in the United States. Therefore, Buddhist compassion training is being used to combat that. James Doty, a Stanford neurosurgeon and director of the Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education, and his colleagues have studied aspects of CCT not only for healthcare providers, but also for people living with chronic pain and post-traumatic stress disorder. A randomized controlled test of CCT found that adults who took the course showed significant improvements in all three domains of compassion: compassion for others, receiving compassion from others, and self-compassion, as compared with the control group. One of the trainees mentions the class, the Buddhist class of compassion that she has attended. She says, the class has already made a profound difference, and I have now learned that having a genuine desire for someone to be happy and free of suffering does not mean that I have to carry their pain around with me. Therefore, compassion must start with observers, or compassion must start with ourselves for it to be held, to be deep, authentic, and long-lived. When you are connected with yourself, then only you are able to see others, relate with others, and the compassion would flow out of that. His Holiness the Dalai Lama must, of course, be the ultimate resource on compassion and how to overcome compassion fatigue. Not only from his perspective as a global spiritual master, but also a refugee and someone who has experienced the tremendous suffering of his own people over the last 60 years. He says that for someone to develop genuine compassion towards others, first she or he must have a basis upon which to cultivate compassion. And that basis is the ability to connect to one's feelings and to care for one's own welfare. Caring for others requires caring for oneself. He emphasizes that compassion is vital to our proper functioning and happiness as human beings. Compassion gives us inner strength. It gives us self-confidence, and that in turn reduces fear, which in turn keeps our mind calm. Therefore, compassion has two functions. It causes our brain to function better, and it brings inner strength. It is also found that services, meaning working for others, is the most powerful and profound trauma healing there is on the planet. It elongates our lives and reduces risk of mortality. And this is scientifically found now. All of the nurturing, healing, and love that you give out, you get back. And there is science behind all this too. Good deeds and compassionate acts feed our self-esteem, make us more feel connected, and give us a sense of purpose in the world. But the key to finding the light side of compassion and not falling prey to tremendous burnout in the face of all the suffering in the world today is self-care. This is essentially where compassion begins. Compassion towards yourself leads to an open heart towards others and a heart that glows softly no matter the troubles threatening to drown it. Our second topic of discussion is virtue. I'm going to say just a few words on this. Virtues are the ethically approved traits of character. Their cultivation is an essential hallmark of moral personality. It is dependent on the socio-political ideals of society and affected by the level of society's cultural, moral and philosophical advancement. The four major virtues recommended by Buddha are karuna, compassion, maitri, love, mudit, joy, and upeksha, equanimity. In Buddhism, we also talk about 10 virtuous practices, non-killing and so on. Similarly, we talk about, and in this kind of 10 virtuous practices is a practice where everyone, monks or lay, or everyone is encouraged to practice. Similarly, the Buddhist texts talk about 11 virtuous mental factors which are present when the mind is in a positive state. These, I would like to just name them. These are faith or confidence. Second, a sense of shame. Conscience, which is consideration of others. Non-attachment, which is one of the topics that we are going to discuss. Heedfulness, equanimity, and non-harmfulness, which includes compassion. And it's not only in the Buddhist literature, but ancient thinkers like Socrates taught about this, and especially Socrates thinks that there is a connection between possessing virtue and being able to give a definition of virtue. That means to have a proper understanding of virtue. He holds that there is a strong connection between virtue and knowledge. He might have believed that if a person really has a comprehensive grip on virtue, then he or she would never choose the wrong side, the wise. If we knew what we were doing, what we were willing, when we choose evil, if we could see the harm we cause not just to our own inner lives, we would never do it. Meaning that if you are able to see the harms of evil doing, probably there are better chances of you are not doing it. So we only ever choose to do something morally wrong because we don't fully know what virtue is, what compassion is, what character is. Therefore, for Socrates, perhaps all wrongdoing is an expression of ignorance, a lack of knowledge of the good, quite similar to the Buddhist notion of ignorance as the cause of all the sufferings. In Buddhism, one point that I would really like tempted to mention is, in Buddhism it speaks about 3 types of compassion, like compassion by seeing suffering nature of sentient beings, compassion which you develop by the fleeting impermanent nature of sentient beings, compassion which you see in the sentient beings because of their having the reality of no intrinsic independent existence, which are really like almost like earth-shaking wisdom and knowledge, which we need a lot of time to discuss about these things. Regarding character, I would like to mention that in the world of learning today, it is the intellectual attainments and not the character of the scholar which counts. We proudly say knowledge is power, but in the absence of character, this power is frequently utilized as a tool for exploitation rather than as a means for doing good to the society. This is the reason why poor people remain poor and rich getting richer and richer. Similarly, in the case of humanity's use of science, imagine science without humanity. What are we going to do with science, technology, and all the host of knowledges that we are pursuing? According to some finding, 80% of the world's research funding goes to projects related to armament and militarization and on refining the means of destruction of human life. Perhaps today, we have amassed enough destructive weapons of all kinds, enough to destroy us several times over. Although there's no need to destroy us several times over. But out of ignorance, greed, negative computation, we have over the years collected so much destructive weapons. Some of the best minds, imagine, some of the best minds of the world are engaged in this activity of militarization, destruction, killing. And they are respected as defense scientists. And they themselves are proud of it. And I think almost every country has a ministry of defense Ministry of External Affairs, but there is no Ministry of Peace, no Ministry of Internal Affairs. The many ills and vices that we see in the society and the world today is because of paying too much attention on rearranging the externals and completely forgetting about rearranging the internals. So therefore, when we talk about development of compassion, virtue and character, we are talking about rearranging the internals, which to me is not only important, but urgent, given the overwhelming suffering, especially unnecessary man-made suffering that we see in the world today. Thus, it is extremely important to have continuous dialogue, discussion, and communication between diverse disciplines and knowledges, especially science and spirituality, to contribute to the betterment of our lives on this planet. With regard to nature of dialogue between Buddhism and science, the natural bridge between Buddhist tradition and the sciences, not so much of the physical sciences, but sciences concerned with the mind and life itself. And I believe this is how the series of Mind Life Conference also started. And we call that the mind and life that is now talked about in sciences very much related to the cognitive sciences and the life sciences. Hence, majority, in the case of the conferences organized by Lavrid also, therefore the majority of our conferences in the past are related to those that deals with human life and emotions, as you see the topics today. And Buddhism is fortunately very rich in dealing with the world of human mind. And in science also, neuroscience, although it's quite young, so neuroscience, neurobiology, and the brain science, they are basic principles, and the basic principles of the nervous system and how it organizes behavior and cognitive psychology also has much to contribute, because this is a direct examination of behavior and hence plays a role in cognitive sciences that makes it very close in some sense to Buddhist theories of mind. A very interesting part of the Western view of how to approach mind is the modern theories, especially linked with artificial intelligence. This is the notion that if you know how mind works, then you should be able to build one. It is a very important part of today's Western understanding of how to go about explaining mind by seeing the development of the brain from fertilization to birth. This offers much insight into how the complex human brain develops from the basic structure common to all nervous systems. So we have much to discuss and much to share. It is also a fact that knowledge of science alone is still insufficient to solve the fundamental problems of life, because unfortunately it cannot make people good. It cannot make people happy. It cannot show them how to rectify their bad habits. And it cannot heal suffering, sadness, anger, sorrow, depression, and so on. But from the viewpoint of the masses, especially in countries in which outlooks and methods have been heavily influenced by science, it does not seem to have a significantly beneficial effect on lifestyles and mental well-being of the population. So what does these people do who have so much faith and hope in science? They look straight to technology, bypassing the real science. So the development of science had therefore little ennobling influence on the knowledge, understanding, or attitude of the society. But if the solution of our problems are not coming from science alone, we cannot blame it. Solution will also not come from religion, and this is exactly what I mentioned last time also, and I strongly believe it. Solution will also not come from religion. It will also not come from politics. It will not also come from economics. It has to come only from man himself. The solution is to be found by each of us by developing a compassionate heart and holistic perspective. Perhaps the most surprising point about happiness is that its achievement is scientific and requires discipline. And without a disciplined mind, you are not really in control of what you are doing, nor can you be independent of events if you wish to be. No matter how powerful, the good news, I call this good news. The good news is no matter how powerful the negative emotions are, they have no foundation in reality. This is what is repeatedly stated in Buddhism and also is now supported by the scientific findings. When we experience positive states, we are generally closer to the true nature of the universe, the reality. In our world of opposites, where there are negative influences, violence, hatred, and anger, there are also the positive aspects of love, compassion, and generosity. Each of us is capable of choosing and manifesting both in our personal reality. Happiness is cultivating a state of mind. I'm mentioning this word happiness because whatever you are doing, science conferences, dialogues with Buddhism, the ultimate aim is to have long-lasting peace and happiness. That is our goal. And happiness is cultivating a state of mind that remains strong and stable, content and peaceful in the face of fleeting emotions and changing circumstances, much like the deep ocean bed that remains tranquil and undisturbed by the stormy winds blowing on the surface. So this is just a brief explanation about the topic of the today's conference. And the participants that you see here, I consider them not only good human beings, but genuine collaborators for the betterment of the humanity and the society. Science attempts to discover laws of nature by means of careful observation, experimentation, reason. It will become clear that a deep commitment to careful inquiry and valid cognition are also at the heart of Buddhist philosophy. Even in ethical discourse, a correct understanding of reality is very much emphasized. Therefore, scientific findings are very helpful to Buddhist thinking. Given that science as a discipline and Buddhism as a system of thought both share a commitment to openness and initial skepticism, it is important that all the participants have an understanding that there should be total openness in our discussion and a free exchange of ideas with no present rules. And we will also strongly encourage not to represent only your tradition and discipline, but also to speak out your mind as an individual person, as an individual practitioner and thinker. We do not expect final solutions, but rather seek fresh approaches to old problems. We are at a stage where new knowledge still will have to come from much broader collaborative effort. I wish that these 3 days dialogue and discussion will benefit all the participants individually and also make its small contribution to the well-being of all sentient beings. Finally, I would like to thank everyone for your support and participation. Thank you, Cosmology&ConsciousnessVI Khandula, for accepting to be the chief guest amidst your very busy schedule, especially that you need to oversee the preparation of the celebration of the upcoming 30th anniversary of the founding of the Tibetan Nuns Project on 2nd October at Domaling Nagari. Thank you all the science and Buddhist presenters and scholars and nuns participating in this panel discussion. And my very special thank you to the Noble Inca Institute for so kindly letting us not only use the venue of the conference, but also providing any needed assistances whenever called for. And thank you everybody present here. And I wish you a fruitful stay and gaining of wisdom in this 3 days conference. Thank you very much.
I'd like to invite now Rinchen Khandula to give a keynote address.
Firstly, I would like to thank Reverend Geshe Lhagdola for giving me the honor of being the chief guest of such a prominent conference. Actually, he said he was very happy to get me, but you don't know how embarrassed I was when I was invited, because I said, what am I going to talk about? I'm not a scientist. I'm not a Buddhist scholar. I really have nothing to give to the congregation. But then he insisted. So I'm here today, and I hope some of what I say may make little sense. So I'm very happy to be here today among so many prominent scientists, all women, and also so many Geshe-mas to be, and students and young people. Thank you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to say something from my heart. I would like to say that today's conference is a very important conference conceptually, because this is what is needed today. We are talking about Buddhism, we are talking about science, but here you are trying to get them together. And that also, not because you want to be the ones to have made it together, but you all are thinking of how to make human life a little bit more livable, a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more joyful. And I personally, although I have no profound idea about how science works, or no profound idea beyond certain stage in Buddhism, but I do understand as a human being, as a concerned human being who care for the lives of the other human beings, as what's going around us. And I see that everything that's not going right around us is all because we made it so. And I'm afraid to say this, that many of which also came from the so-called new inventions. So I believe, if I may just give a little glimpse into this, even as scientists, we have to really think about what is really needed, what is really benefiting the human beings, and what is really not needed. So all I would say is, as scientists, you have made human life so much more comfortable in so many ways, for which we are ever grateful. For example, without lights here today, we wouldn't have had this comfortable conference. Without the tap water, particularly the women would have had a difficult time going and fetching water all the time and washing clothes. For these things, I'm extremely grateful for the scientific inventions. But beyond certain things, I think we have to really think about. And all I say is, through conferences like this, between wonderful people like you all, something positive comes out eventually. For example, we have all these wonderful gadgets today. Now, as a very simple human example, I happen to go to so many places in the world and meet our people and talk to our children with the different umbrellas. But all I go is as a human being, as a mother, and look into the community and see what's really happening. So, for example, we used to travel miles to get to a little community together in the West, for example, of Tibetans who are cut off the whole major community, many of the cultural aspects. All the children here is when people like us go around and talk about our culture, our people, and so on. So in the early times, the parents used to really get them together with much difficulty to go to these talks of not just mine, to many people's. And I think people really benefited from these talks to a certain extent. But now what I'm saying is, within the recent years, when we go to give talks, if I look into the audience, I see children playing with their mobile phones rather than listening to the speaker. And then unfortunately, even the parents don't seem to correct them. So what's happening here is we are losing the whole purpose of getting together. Of course, they should be used to using mobiles and different gadgets, but there's a limit to it. So I would say, in Buddhism, the middle way. And then also, practically speaking, what's to be done where? How much do we need? These are the questions we think we need to ask. Then on the other side, I'm so happy to see so many students and so many young people interested in this gathering, which is very, very important. And then here again, we are also talking about Buddhism. Tibetans happens to be Buddhists, and I think we are very proud to be Buddhists. But I think even in being proud, you have to really know Buddhism. Otherwise, just being born in a Buddhist country, being born in a Buddhist family, doesn't really make you a good Buddhist. You have to really look into yourself and see, am I doing what the Buddha wanted me to do? And I think today's time is so good for you that you got a basic education, you got the basic opportunity to look into the words of Buddha, to really understand it by yourself. Therefore, I would really request and pray that you all really try to understand Buddhism as it should be understood. Therefore, you can really then have such conferences, person to person, and discuss. And then both will start making sense, I think. If you don't understand either of them properly, then there's no ground to speak. Now, going back to the understanding of Buddhism, I am so happy that today we have the Geshe-mas, Lobe-mas to come and participate in these conferences. I would also like to say how important education I consider is for both boys and girls. But unfortunately, during the past centuries, somehow the girls got left behind. But I'm glad now we woke up, the community woke up all over the world to say the girls also need education, which is why today we have so-called Geshe-mas and Lobe-mas for their own due right. We worked a lot for them to get where they are through their own right. There were discussions on how they should be having their exams, how the marks should be given, and we were the ones who said, don't give any concessions just because they are nuns. We would like them to study the same texts the same way. We would also like them to be judged the same way, tested the same way, and come out with flying colors. And if anybody fails to come out with the flying colors, it's unfortunate for the person. But we don't want in the history to say, oh, of course we have the Geshe-mas because they were checked in a very lenient way, or they were giving concessions. We didn't want that. So today, I'm very happy to share this with you, that all the Geshe-mas and Lobe-mas, they had their curriculum same as the monks. They were tested in the same manner, and eventually those who came out with the results, flying colors, they came out with a due right. And they worked very, very hard, very, very hard, I must also say that. And the teachers who dealt with them were very kind, I must say. I have the greatest, profound respect for them, because they kept saying, yes, you should go ahead, you can do it, you should study. They didn't say, you're a girl, you won't be able to study beyond this. So I will never forget this in my whole life. When I spoke to some of the teachers, that's what they said. And also eventually, when they were tested, they said, oh, we never thought the nuns were so good. They really are doing well. So I also wanted to share this with you. I think in some ways, the education is connected with this conference. So, and also, I would like to tell the nuns, I'm so grateful that Reverend Lakdola has included the nuns in this conference. And now you will be included in many other important conferences. Now my request here, as a mother, not as a scholar, not as a spiritual person or anything like that, but as a mother, I would like to request you all to participate in all of this. Understand what you're doing and implement that in your life. This is not to get a certificate and say, I went to this conference, I am a Geshe-ma. This is for others to see, look, that's a Geshe-ma. She has really embodied the education. Look how she looks, look how she speaks, look how she treats the others. This is what I would like to see. Even when I'm dead and gone, I hope this principle will live with all of you. And then to the young people, I always, as an elder community member of the Tibetan community, I always think of the young people as very important in the future of Tibet, in the future of humanity when I talk about Buddhists. I'm not promoting or trying to say anything about Buddhism, but to me, as a person, Buddhism is so related to life. Therefore, it makes the most sense to me. So I would like the children also to look at that way. What does Buddhism teach you? Basically, it teaches you to be a kind human being, good human being, and then also it teaches you how to get rid of your suffering. Because I think the whole world is so used to trying to get rid of your suffering by imposing suffering on others. This is not the way you get rid of your suffering. So, as young children, try to look into these. And then also, even in Buddhism, we have many teachers. So far, Tibetans are very used to listening to the teachers. And then also, I must say, many of us are very good followers of what is taught. But I would like to request you to really listen and check and see what you have understood. What did this person teach us? Does that really go hand in hand with what Buddha taught us? Now you all are educated. You have access to so many books. The words of Buddha, the straight words of Buddha you have access to. So try to check that, study that, and then implement that in your lives. Just don't follow Buddhism ignorantly. This is what I'm trying to do myself. I have a long way to go. I'm sure you all will be long gone so far, then so much further than me, but this is how I'm trying to walk in life. So I find a lot of sense in there by being analytical rather than ignorantly following something. Therefore, I'm really interested, and I've given 30 years of my life for the debate of the nuns and their studies to be Geshe-mas and Lobin and all of this, because I believe in the analytical studies of Buddhism, which then reflects in your life. So you begin to do everything analytically, not just follow it just because it's custom. So I'm so glad now that the nuns are coming out as Geshe-mas. And then also, I would like to share this with you, that we have quite a number of teachers who are nuns. And I'm really happy the way the teachers are dealing with the students. To me, the children are very, very precious, very, very important. They need to be dealt with kindness, gentility. So I, in a way, see that these few nuns who have chosen the path of teachers are really doing well as of till now. And I'm really happy. So in the future, the more of you become teachers, I think that will be also serving the community and the humanity by large. And very often we get lost in the so-called fame. Once you got something, you want to be famous, you want to do this, but what does fame bring? What is so-called fame? I think as young people, you really have to think about that seriously. And I take this opportunity to tell you that also the right to say this, because I think I am much older than many of your mothers. So please take this as a mother's advice and not as a scholar's or a profound spiritual leader. And I'm so happy to see so many young girls here as students, also interested in Buddhism. That's wonderful. And this, I think, should give the elders in the community more responsibility to see how much interest there is in the young people in science and Buddhism. And therefore, we have to create more platforms for their needs. And I'm sure this will happen, and it should happen. And finally, I would really like to thank Geshe Tola, for giving me this opportunity to see this wonderful gathering and to see the interest of young boys and girls, nuns, and also to have so many wonderful friends from all over the world and India who care for us and who really share the knowledge and who wish to get together and do something together. I think this is wonderful. Thank you again. Thank you very much.